We're rolling.
Hello, my name is Jackie Geringer McDermott, and we're recording live from the English Valley History Center in North English, Iowa. It is April 12th, 2025. This diary was written by Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, whose nickname was Libby Wade. She was my grandma's aunt. Here's a picture of Libby, and this is in later years. She lived in a little house on Oak Street, just east of Main Street in North English, Iowa. We are now reading about October of 1946. When we are finished with a couple of weeks of the diary, I'll give you some news and features from the History Center. October 16th, 1946. 72 today. Russell went to Cedar Rapids. I finished the ironing and wiped off the kitchen floor. I'm working on tea towels for the bazaar. Cold and cloudy. Jenny came up and invited us to supper down there. Today is Lib's 72nd birthday, although they have already held the birthday celebration for her and her sister-in-law, Minnie Claypool, with a gathering at the home of her son, Warren or Mike Wade, and his wife, Lena. You might remember from last week that the local Methodist church is having a bazaar soon. I would guess that Libby did excellent embroidery work on the tea towels. My grandmother, Bertha Claypool Geringer, who was her niece, did superb embroidery. Since it is Libby's actual birthday today, her daughter-in-law, Jenny Wade, right here in the picture, has invited her down to their house for supper a block away. Her husband is Wayne, or Perky Wade, right here. Her daughter, Hazel Cobb, is right there. Up here on this side is Bud, Walter Wade, Evelyn Kurtz, Belva Yoss, and Harold or Stub Wade. That picture was taken a few years previous to that. They're older than that now. Russell Wade is Libby's 39-year-old son who lives with her in his house. Russell is a truck driver and a laborer at the Home Lumber Company just a block away. He often drives to Cedar Rapids for work. This picture is from his days of service in World War II. I just found it recently. October 17th, 1946. Aunt Minnie's 78th birthday. We were down to Wayne's for supper last night. All of their family and Russell and I. Had such a nice supper. Wayne's and their children gave me a pressure cooker, something I've been wanting for a long time. It's awfully dark and cold today. Aunt Minnie Claypool, right there in this picture, is her children's aunt, her actual sister-in-law, the widow of her brother Werner. They are the only two of their generation left in her birth family. A pressure cooker would have been a perfect gift for Libby, as she loves to preserve food. October 18th, 1946. Rain most of the night, clear and cold today. Russell went to Fort Dodge for the Home Lumber Company. I had company part of the day. Mary R. was here, and also Lena. Swept and shook the rug. The cleaner brought Russell's suits. Gave a check for the same, $2. Also wrote a check to Mary for a hen for $1.74, and she brought in eggs at 40 cents per dozen. Mary Wade Regseger is right there in this picture. Was an old friend from the Green Valley days, who was distantly related to Lib's husband, Bert Wade. The North English cleaners evidently delivered in those days, and Russell got his suits cleaned for a total of $2. I wish we could get some of those 40 cents per dozen eggs from Mary R. October 19th, 1946. Rather cold, but bright. Resty came early. Wanted to see the Locker folks and waited here. Mrs. Bolts was here for a while, and Maud. Mrs. Brown's furniture sold this p.m. I didn't go. Mr. Holton brought a gallon of sorghum. $2.49 per gallon. Good, though. Rusty Wilkinson was an old neighbor from out in the Yankee Point neighborhood. Johnson's Locker was just a half a block west, so Rusty waited at Lib's until they opened. Elizabeth, or Lizzie Bolts, was an elderly neighbor. Maud Foster Claypool was Libby's niece by marriage. She was married to Libby's nephew, Ray Claypool. Mrs. Justine Brown was the mother of Rex Brown, Lena Warner, and Mace Brown, the big league pitcher, and two sons who predeceased her with influenza in 1918 and 1919, who were J.C. Brown and Von Brown. She passed away, and they're now selling her household goods. And here's the picture of the ad that was in the newspaper that week. Carolyn Warner just came to the History Center this morning. Justine was her great-grandmother, and Carolyn remembers that Justine lived across from the old Catholic Church, and that she was a wonderful baker. As a matter of fact, Carolyn has used her recipe before. Here's the picture of Justine with her husband Gary Brown and their son Mace Brown, the major league pitcher. J. Elvin Holton, who brought the sorghum, was the grandfather to the Holtons in North English nowadays. I would guess he probably grew that sorghum on his farm. It is sweet like sugar, so Lib would use it for baking and cooking. October 20th, 1946. Russell went away early, 6:30 a.m. He and Mildred made plans to go to McGregor. It is a nice day. I went down to Bertha's in the p.m. Lloyd G's have been here for a week or more. Away today. Alonzo's and Glenn's were there. John brought me home. It's quite a walk for me anymore. I wonder why. Hattie was here in the evening. Since it is October 20th, Russell and his girlfriend, Mildred Reese, are headed to McGregor. They are most likely going to look at the autumn leaves. Bertha Claypool Geringer was Libby's 46-year-old niece and my paternal grandmother. In 1946, her family had moved to town from the farm and lived at the far east end of Oak Street in the house where Robin and Joel Short now live. Lloyd Geringer was my grandpa John Geringer's nephew from Texas. They had come to Iowa for a vacation but were visiting others today. My uncle Alonzo, or Al Geringer, and his wife Betty Core Geringer, and their children Nancy and Buck Geringer were visiting at my grandparents' house, as well as my uncle Glenn Geringer and his new bride, Mamie Burkett Geringer. This is a picture of my grandparents, John and Bertha Geringer, with 10 of their boys about 15 years later. They are in the center. On the left, over here, on this side, is Mamie and Glenn Geringer, my aunt and uncle, and then Betty and Al are right next to them. Betty's the one in the flowered dress. October 21st, 1946. I washed. In the p.m., I had gall trouble again. It makes me feel kind of mean. It was a lovely day again. Russell worked late. They are loading corn into a car. And I would guess that that means a rail car, as the railroad was the means of transporting grain in those days. October 22nd, 1946. Another nice day. There has been frost, but not so much here. The tender sultanas are still in bloom in the porch box. Booster class meets at Alice Vanaken's. I'm going. I also went to lodge in the evening. It was cake night. Mrs. Pope gave an account of an assembly meeting in Mason City. Libby is very interested in all kinds of plants. I had to look up sultana plants. They're the same as impatiens or touch-me-nots. Booster class was a church group that met in members' homes. Alice Vanaken was the wife of John Vanaken that I spoke about last week, so she was the great-grandmother of Kathy, Jim, and Lynn Morrison, and Carolyn and Lloyd Warner, among others. Libby also belongs to a lodge called Rebecca's, which meets above the locker a half a block from her house. October 23rd, 1946. All in today. I should can pears or iron, but I think I'll wait for a while. I had a letter from Anna. They have bought 7,000 seedling trees. Belva and Michael were here in the evening. Russell was away. Later in the night, it rained. Heavy thunder. Libby's only daughter, Anna, and her husband, Richard Cray, and their three boys, Mylan Richard, Arlen, and Burl, live in southern Texas, where they have a citrus ranch and grow cotton, etc. Belva Yoss, her granddaughter, and her newborn son, Mick Yoss, this is Mick Yoss, had come to visit their grandmother. Russell went out, either with his girlfriend or friends. October 24th, 1946. Feeling okay today. Canned pears. Had 8 quart. Used my new pressure cooker for the first time. Think it is fine. Dark and gloomy all a.m. Clear and colder tonight. Hattie was here. Hattie Newberry Killian is her 55-year-old neighbor. October 25th, 1946. My father was born on this date in 1829 at Urbana, Ohio, 117 years ago. I ironed and carried the canned pears to the cellar. In the evening, Russell and I and Hattie and Mrs. Hornick and Elsie Van Fleet went to Williamsburg. The Rebeccas there were celebrating their 50th anniversary. Jonathan Claypool is in this picture, right there, on that side with his 2 brothers. He was Libby's father and my great-great-grandfather. He brought his wife and small children to Iowa to live, as did his brother William on this side, before the Civil War. Both families settled on the prairie north of North English in a community called Yankee Point. His brother Samuel, at the top, and his family came in the 1880s from Ohio to live in Iowa County also. Russell has volunteered to drive his mother and her fellow lodge members to Williamsburg to visit the Williamsburg Rebecca Lodge. I also learned in my research that Mrs. Hornick was a teacher and the mother of Russell's friend, George Hornick. They would later move to Elbia, Iowa. October 26, 1946. Mary R. was here. A little tired today, but have a good time to remember. Harold Claypool was the principal speaker. It is nice today. Warm but a good breeze. A change in the weather is predicted. Mr. Holton was here working on the garage in the p.m., and Maud was here in the p.m. Harold Ballard Claypool from Williamsburg is a lawyer who spoke to the Rebecca Lodge gathering that night. Harold Ballard Claypool is the grandson of Libby's uncle William Claypool that I mentioned above. Libby's cousin Ernest Claypool was Harold's father, and Harold's mother was Jessie Ballard, who passed away at a very young age. Harold Ballard Claypool was the grandfather of the current attorney from Williamsburg, Jim Claypool, and Robert Claypool, and Janet Oliver. He was the county attorney from 1934 to 1938 and served two terms in the Iowa House of Representatives and was an attorney in Williamsburg for 52 years. J. Elvin Holton, the local carpenter, was still hard at work on that garage to house Russell's car. Sunday, October 27th, 1946. It is still nice. I picked some dahlias this morning. Russell cleared away a lot of the flower stems and grass, etc., and hauled it off. Marion and Francis Wade and children were here last evening. They came to get a package Louise left here. The following sentence has been edited to conform to standards for the year of 2025. An African-American singer at church today. Russell said she was good. Jenny here in the morning, also Maud. According to the North English record, the singer at church was named Ivory Winston, and she was from Ottumwa. She performed 9 songs. Marion Long Wade was Libby's great niece. She was married to a relative of Libby's husband named Francis Wade, the brother of Max Wade. Louise Claypool Long, who left the package for her daughter, was Libby's niece, the daughter of Libby's brother, Benton Claypool. October 28th, 1946. It was cloudy this morning, but I washed. Cleared later. Mr. Holton and son finished the garage. Russell painted the door in the evening. Jenny and Michael were here. He has 2 teeth, just through. A bunch of boys were here in the evening, Halloweening. I gave them cookies. October 29th, 1946. Started ironing in the morning. Lena came and Mrs. Bolts. Had wild goose for dinner. Cooked it in the pressure cooker. It was good, but the beans cooked dry and were not good. Russell took some of the goose to Mrs. Ferris. Mrs. Schulenthaler brought some more tea towels for me to hem. Lena Wallace Wade was Libby's daughter-in-law who come up to visit. And Myrtle Ferris, that they took the goose to, was a longtime book bookkeeper at the home lumber company where Russell worked. In an interview with the North English Record in 1978, Myrtle said that she had been employed at the home lumber company for over 50 years. Her first job when she moved to town as the new bride of Russell Ferris was at the farmer's store, and when they sold out to the people who named it the Ferris store, she went to work at the lumber company. She was already working there in the 1920 census, so it was actually 58 years she worked there. She was also the town treasurer and served on many committees and boards around town. I looked for a picture of Myrtle Ferris, but wasn't able to find one. I'm sure there was one around town someplace, and I'll show it when I find it. The tea towels that Mrs. Schulenthaler brought to Libby only needed to be hemmed. I thought she wanted them embroidered. In those days, you bought unhemmed towels and hemmed them yourself. October 30th, 1946. Another nice day, not cold, 70s. I hold the butternuts, hard on the hands. Mrs. Schulenthaler brought me pillowcases she stamped for me. Jenny and I went to McGuire's and got some squashes. Harold is home nursing a bruised face. Mary Kennedy and Stella were here in the evening. Also Belva, Evelyn, and Sue. Libby makes good use of products like butternuts and squash, as almost all meals are home cooked. The pillowcases from Mrs. Schulenthaler needed to be embroidered because they were stamped with the design to be embroidered. Libby does not say that she charged for this needlework, but she might have. And here's a picture of Dr. A.C. Schulenthaler, Arnold Charles Schulenthaler Sr., and his wife Jessie in their centennial clothes in 1954. This picture was taken by Noel Mons and is part of a collection of centennial pictures that can be found at the North English Library. Mary Kennedy, who visited in the evening, was a woman who lived out east of town in the Crossroads School District in the 1940 census, but by 1947, she and her husband, Pearl Kennedy, had moved to Cedar Rapids because Stella stayed with them for a week when her husband, Roy Wallace, was in the hospital there. The Kennedys later moved to California. Stella Wallace was the mother of Lena Wallace Wade, and Belva Yoss and Evelyn Kurtz were Libby's young married granddaughters, and Sue Kurtz was her 4-year-old great-granddaughter. And there's a picture of Suzanne Kurtz. October 31st, 1946, Halloween. Colder, temperature 47 degrees at 7:30 a.m., warmer in the p.m. I went over to Verdi's. Someone threw a brick through Gobin Smith's window last night. A lot of pranks and lawless acts. Not fun at all. Verdi Mahana McKinstry was Libby's best friend, and Gobin, or George H. Smith, was the father of George M. Smith, Mary Cecil, and Dorothy Helen Smith. Gobin worked at the Neoco Oil Company, which stood for North English Oil Company. That is the end of the diary portion of the program for this week. The English Valleys History Center has been operating on Main Street in North English since 2006. The center operates a museum, monthly programming, a community coffee shop, and provides meeting spaces for groups and organizations. These include family and class reunions, celebrations, gatherings, and club meetings. The History Center offers all of its services for donations only. It does not have annual memberships like many other historical organizations and relies largely on private and community donations. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and donations are tax deductible. Your support of the History Center would also help continue its operations and provide a valuable community asset. Please send donations to the English Valleys History Center, P.O. Box 70, North English, Iowa 52316. Our featured story this week is Emma Magoon Post and the Telephone Switchboard. You might remember from the Andy Griffith Show, or you might have experienced it yourself, that in the early days when you wanted to call someone, you picked up the phone and said, "Sarah, get me the meat market," or "Sarah, get me Mrs. Jones." Well, we had our own version of that in North English. The telephone was invented in 1876, and then in 1901, Clyde Post, the local jeweler, who was in business in North English for 63 years, and his friend Omer Smith built transmitters and receivers and installed a wire line from Main Street to Highland Street and were able to have a telephone conversation. The idea immediately caught on, and soon many lines were installed. Clyde Post built a switchboard operated by Mrs. Clyde Post, the former Emma Magoon. Emma Post was completely blind and operated the switchboard for many years. By 1903, the North English Telephone Company had been established, and this article appeared in the National Telephone magazine. Probably the most extraordinary telephone exchange apparatus now in use is that at North English, Iowa. The switchboard is a compact cabinet containing 64 spring jacks of novel construction and 7 pairs of cords and listening keys. The front board is 12 inches square and is divided by a strip of molding into 2 sections. Each section has 4 rows of spring jack holes, 8 holes in a row. A shallow round bottom groove connects the right holes in each row, affording the operator a means of counting and connecting the holes by sliding the plug lightly along the groove from right to left or left to right. The rows may be found in the same manner by sliding the peg up or down in a vertical groove provided for that purpose. The really striking feature of this unique exchange, however, is its system of bell signals. Each line is provided with a bell with a special tone. They are mounted in a cabinet a few feet from the switchboard. There are large bells, small bells, wire clock gongs, sleigh bells, and high-level bicycle bells. The differing tones of the ordinary telephone bells were obtained by selection, by turning the center, by slitting with a fine saw, or by unscrewing a large concave washer underneath the nut holding the bell on the support. A fine bit of steel wire, 4 inches long, is soldered to each bell hammer, carrying out a square of paper at its outer end. The paper bears the line name or number, forming a visual signal for the assistant operator who can see. The bell cabinet is so situated that the paper squares may be plainly seen from the operator's seat. Okay, here's a picture in the history book of the old one. I can't really lift this book, it's getting so heavy. And it had 2 parts, but now there's only the one part that we have here in the center. And we're gonna move the camera and show you what it looks like, because it's pretty unique. Let's go right up there to it. Notice the different sizes of all the bells. There's huge ones in the back, and then they get different size as you come down. And then when you get down here further, you can see on the actual switchboard part, there's actual names still on there. They pulled that across or up and down, however they needed to go, to put on there who was calling. Okay, you can bring that back now. That switchboard was in Des Moines at the State Fair, and Floyd Seabee made arrangements to bring it back to town. Carl Hogendorn was one of the ones that was originally involved in getting it to be saved. Can you get that in there? You have to pull it apart. I want you to stand there forever. There you go. We'll get it back together here so he can leave. All right, perfect. Oh, no, not perfect. Let's try it again. We don't care. It's live. We don't care.